What's up everyone, Darcblade here with another Hunter's Guide to Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. In this video, we're going to be bringing you an endgame build, this time for the Great Sword. Now what is an endgame build? Well, it's a build that is constructed from various armor pieces from the endgame monsters of Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak to give you a strong armor set, a strong build to take on all the endgame tasks that are presented to us. Now as always, if you find these videos and builds helpful or enjoyable, please consider subscribing to the channel as well as leaving a like on the video, as it does help and it allows me to bring you more builds for a variety of different hunting styles. Now when it comes to the Greatsword, it's a very powerful weapon, capable of hitting 4-digit numbers. It can bring down monsters in fewer swings than other weapons. On top of that, with the new additions, it allows the Greatsword to be a little bit more tankier than normal, as you're able to power through monster attacks and follow up with attacks of your own. So with that, I present to you the Resentment Greatsword build. This build is all about utilising the Resentment skill to increase our attack, and we're also combining it with other skills such as Dragonheart and Dereliction to provide us a risk-reward build that leans towards favouring the Rage Slash playstyle. This can be used with the True Charge Slash of course if you want to, but there are certain aspects about this build that definitely lend itself to that Rage Slash attack. So for this build you'll need the Valstrax Helm Eclipse, Valstrax Mail Eclipse, Valstrax Braces Eclipse and the Valstrax Coil Eclipse. I'm also using the Archfiend Armor Seros instead of the Valstrax Greaves, so we have at least one point in Dereliction and thus can have Resentment active all the time. You can of course use the Valstrax Greaves if you would prefer to max out Dragonheart. The choice is up to you. As for your Petalace, this is down to personal preference. I go for the Absolute Petalace for that extra health, but the Demon Petalace is decent if you want to deal extra damage. As for your talisman, not everyone's going to have the same talismans unfortunately, so I've gone for a talisman that gives us 2 points in Resentment. This is either through the skill actually being on the talisman itself, or through decoration slots. As for the weapon, I'm using Mirak's Asterism, which is the Lucent Nagakuga Greatsword. The Kimura Greatsword would also be a good alternative as it provides you exactly the same decoration slots as well as a similar amount of sharpness. With the Krios Crafting on the weapon, I've gone for a Rampage slot upgrade, which in turn allows us to use one of the anti-species decorations such as Wyvern Exploit or Anti-Aerial Exploit. So when it comes to the decorations, first of all I've gone for Charger Jaws to max out Focus, I've then gone for Wirebug Jaws to max out Wirebug Whisperer, Grinder Jaws to max out Speed Sharpening, Hard Steadfast Jaw to max out Stun Resistance, Sharp Jaws to provide us Protective Polish, Protection Jaws to max out Divine Blessing, a Diversion Jaw for a point in the Diversion skill, a Sated Jaw which is optional to be fair, which gives us a point in Free Meal, Critical Jaws to max out Crit Boost, and a Spirit Bird Jaw to give us a point in the Spirit Bird Core skill. So if you've done what I've done here, you'll have a build with a raw attack of 395 if you're using the red scroll, or 410 if you're using the blue scroll. You have a poison rating of either 21 if you're using the red scroll, or 20 if you're using the blue scroll. Poison weapons I find are always useful, as rarely is a monster completely immune to the poison element, but with this build the poison rating is so low and the raw attack so high, this is a raw attack build in all honesty. Anyway, we'll then have Purple Sharpness with 0% affinity, although this can be 50% when we take into account Weakness Exploit, and you'll have a strong defense of 758. That is strong against Dragon, but unfortunately weak to all the other elements. However, because we are using Dragonheart, when Dragonheart is active, all our elemental resistances will be set to 50. And then when it comes to the switch skills, like I said, this build can work with either the Rage Slash playstyle or the True Charge Slash playstyle. It's down to your personal preference, but I prefer the Rage Slash playstyle with this specific build. So when it comes to the skills, first of all you have Resentment at level 5. Resentment is a skill that whenever we have a portion of red health on our health bar, which should be all the time with this build thanks to the Dereliction skill, we'll gain 25 raw attack. You'll then have Dragonheart at level 4. It really would have been nice to get this to level 5 in all honesty, but that is the payoff for having Resentment active all the time. If you're going to go for Dragonheart, it's best to go for it at either level 4 or 5. Dragonheart is a skill that when our health is at 70% or less, will contract Dragon Blight, but this will increase all our elemental resistances, setting them to 50, as well as increasing our attack power, our raw attack, by 5%. This would be up to 10% attack power, and requiring only 80% health or less if we were using Dragonheart at level 5. But like I said, you can swap out the Archfiend boots if you want to max out Dragonheart. I just prefer it this way, as not only Dereliction keeps Resentment active pretty much all the time, but it also helps control our health threshold so we can keep Dragonheart active. Anyway, we then have Resuscitate at level 3, which is a useful skill that synergizes well with Dragonheart. as whenever we have a debuff or ailment on a hunter, like the Dragon Blight provided through Dragonheart, we'll get another massive increase to our raw attack. You'll then have critical boost at level 3, increasing the damage of our attacks whenever they crit a monster, but only applies to the raw portion of an attack, not the elemental portion. You'll then have weakness exploit at level 3, our main affinity based skill, which increases our affinity by 50% when we're attacking monster weak points. You'll then have protective polish at level 3, which is a useful quality of life skill that allows us to put a protective coating over our sharpness gauge, preventing any sharpness loss for a small duration of time every time we sharpen our weapon. You'll then have focus at level 3, which increases how quickly we can charge up the greatsword's charged attacks. You'll then have Divine Blessing at level 3, which to be honest is a useful skill when you're playing a risky build like this one, which allows us to take reduced damage should we take a hit from a monster 50% of the time. Anyway, you'll then have Stun Resistance at level 3, preventing all stun effects on our hunter. You'll then have Speed Sharpening at level 3, increasing how quickly we can sharpen our weapon and apply that protective polish coating to our sharpness gauge. You'll then have Flinch Free at level 3, which is a result of the talisman we're using. You may not have this. This prevents knockbacks and tripping from monsters and our allies. You'll then have Wirebug Whisperer at level 3, allowing us to recharge our wirebugs more quickly, as well as how long we can hold additional wirebugs. If you're like me and rely on the wirebugs a lot with the greatsword, this is quite a useful skill. Anyway, you'll then have Free Meal at level 1, which is a byproduct of our decorations. This gives us a small chance at not using an item when we consume it, such as health potions and that. You'll then have Fortify at level 1, which is a byproduct of our Krios Crafting, which every time we cart and come back, will come back with increased raw attack and defense. This can be applied twice to a hunter during any one hunt. Anyway, you'll then have Diversion at level 1. Diversion is a risky skill as it increases the attention drawn when attacking a monster, so it means that the monster will be drawn to you more than your allies or your palicos or palamutes. This can be risky as wanting the attention isn't always desired, but with the Rage Slash you kinda want this, as Rage Slash you'll deal more damage should you take a hit whilst actually charging up the move. I would say though, if you don't like Rage Slash, then you might want to consider dropping Diversion. Anyway, you'll then have Dereliction at level 1, which is one of the key skills for this build. Dereliction is a skill that will constantly drain your health, but as a result it will bolster your attack. This means that when using the red scroll, your elemental or status values will be increased, but we don't really need to use this as this isn't an elemental or status build, and whilst using the blue scroll, our raw attack and stun potency will also be increased. So most of the time with this build you'll be wanting to fight in the blue scroll. But there is another aspect to this, as when you're fighting a monster, multiple Krios will surround your hunter, draining your health, but obviously increasing your attack. But when you perform the skill swap, it will heal you for the health they've drained. So switching scrolls is still a nice quick free heal with this build. You then have Spirit Bird Call at level 1, which is a quality of life skill that causes random spirit birds to come to your hunter at fixed intervals during certain quests. This basically means non-arena quests. So it means you don't always have to go out and look for spirit birds, they'll come to you. And then finally you'll have War Runner Boost at level 1, a byproduct of our Krios Crafting. Basically this allows our wirebug gauge to recover faster when we're wall running. It's just a simple quality of life skill, nothing too important. But there we have it, those are all the skills for the Resentment Greatsword build. But let's move on to talk about the Krios Crafting. Now, as these are endgame builds, they will feature Krios Crafting on them, but I haven't gone to the extent that they feature the rarest skills possible. So the skills and decoration upgrades featured in these endgame builds are normally obtainable with little farming. So when it comes to the Valstrax Helm, this has simply got a point in Divine Blessing. When it comes to the Valstrax Mail, this has a tier 2 decoration slot upgrade, an additional tier 1 slot, and a point in the War Runner boost skill. With the Valstrax Bracers, it simply has 2 additional tier 1 decoration slots added to it. With the Valstrax Coil, it's got a point in Wirebug Whisperer, and with the Archfiend Armaceros, it simply has a point in Fortify. So it's not the rarest of Krios Crafting on this build in all honesty, but every build, even these endgame builds, they come with a variety of positives and negatives, pros and cons. This build's biggest pro is its damage output. Thanks to its strange combination of attack skills like Resentment, Dragonheart, Resuscitate, Crit Boost, Weakness Exploit and more, is able to bring down monsters fairly quickly. I will say though, if you are using the Rage/playstyle with this build, you may not see the biggest damage numbers possible with the Greatsword, but you're able to attack more frequently, and this build is also a little bit more forgiving when it comes to aiming your attacks. On top of that, this build has quality of life skills, from Protective Polish, Divine Blessing, Focus, Stun Resistance, Speed Sharpening, and more. These will all add to the quality of the hunt, and even the survival of this build in all honesty. And the final pro is that this build can be used against pretty much any monster. This is thanks to the build focusing on raw attack more than the poison rating on it, meaning that we don't have to take into consideration a monster's elemental or element resistances. But of course there are cons. One of the major cons for this build is unfortunately the health drain aspect. There is a massive health drain on this build that is constantly activated, and you need to utilize this health drain in order to deal maximum damage. Unfortunately though, this can leave you at risk of carting. And the other con for this build is, unfortunately, despite having Protective Polish and Speed Sharpening, we only have a sliver of purple sharpness, and we can burn through it quite quickly. But regardless, if you're looking for a quirky greatsword build to use that is capable of dealing a lot of damage, and especially if you do enjoy the rage slash playstyle, then I'd recommend this build. As long as you're managing your health, utilising the various buffs, you'll find that this is a very strong greatsword build indeed. But what are your thoughts? Please leave a comment down below, and until next time, I've been Darcblade, bringing you an endgame build for the greatsword in Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. Hope you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, subscribe and like for more.